Direct from the Six, world-renowned, Canada's largest city, with Canada's biggest thinkers, visionaries, and hustlers. This is Startup Talk, featuring the founders, funders, innovators, and community leaders who've led Canada's startup ecosystem right here in Toronto. You'll hear the challenges, the failures, the successes. Toronto's Startup Podcast gives you the full story direct from the entrepreneurs and influencers who've made a difference. Now, the host of Startup Talk, the founder of TorontoStarts, the Startup Coach.
This is a question I get asked all the time, at least different variations of it, especially now because valuations aren't the same that they were a few years ago. How can Canadian founders ensure they get fair valuation? There's always a balance, but the investors are always saying the same thing to the founders. So maybe I'll start with you, Alex, on this one.
Yeah, sounds good. We do a lot on valuation. I think people often get confused around what valuation really means. Valuation is really just a function of an agreed price for a transaction between two people. The valuation of your company is created when you find a person who's willing to buy shares in your company at a certain price. And you have X number of shares that exist. You have now determined a price per share. That's the value of the company. And so if you can't find someone who's willing to buy shares at a given price, then that's not your valuation. You can show up and say my valuation is $20 million, and it's not going to be that. So there's a million different ways that you can use to try to get a range for your valuation as a sort of starting point. I think the easiest one that you'll be able to do on your own is really just look at comparable companies in a similar market at a similar stage and what's kind of going on in the market right now. Because just like how the stock market goes up and down, expected valuations for startup deals, valuations go up and down over time. And it's different in the US and Canada. If you're rocking up to Canadian investors and you see that, oh, somebody XYZ raised at a pre-seed in the US, $20 million valuation. In Canada, you're not going to find anyone who's going to fund you at a $20 million valuation pre-seed. There's some presentations that, Craig, you and I put together, I think a few years ago, where I literally put out a chart with some ranges. I think those still generally apply. Like if you're pre-seed, you're looking at a valuation usually between 3 and 5 million. If you're seed, sort of somewhere sort of 5 to 10. If you're getting towards Series A, then you're sort of 10 to 20. It really depends on your industry, your traction, and everything like that. But pre-seed is usually before revenue. Seed is you have some revenue. Series A is you've hit $1 million in annual recurring revenue, is generally the sort of buckets that Canadian investors are looking for. It's different in the US and it's different kind of person to person, but you got to sort of have a range. And then it's really a conversation with the other investors. And it's a negotiation and sort of back and forth. Read the book, Venture Deals by Brad Feld, if you haven't read that, to get a basis of what's going to take place during the negotiation and deciding what's important and isn't important in terms of your company structure. But yeah, choosing a valuation is, it's going to be an agreement between you and the investor at the end.
I mean, I think for me, at least, it's when you approach this, especially for the pre-seed and seed round, like you should be, and I may be curious if there's disagreement, but you should be expecting to be giving up anywhere between probably 15 and 30% per round.
Yeah. And
you should raise an amount of money that you can use and defend a plan against.
Yep.
When you line those two numbers up, that's your valuation.
However, if your need is suddenly 10 million and you're at the pre-seed and you're like, well, I'm giving up 30% of my company, so my valuation is 30 million. That's wrong.
You got a problem.
At that point, you can't defend the 10 million need, right?
No, exactly. Right. You got to find that
it's the function of the two. How much equity you can give up and a financial plan you can actually defend. And if you're trying to say, yeah, I need 10 million out the gate, well, up to you to defend it. But
feel free.
Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, probably every 10th or so company that I work with actually undervalues the company. And I've got to remind them that you can't make a go of it if you start your valuation at $1 million.
Right.
Because, even if you raise 200,000, you've already given up 20% of the company before you've done anything. So It's not. I think Alex, your range is bang on. You don't see very many companies valuing themselves for less than 3 million, even if they are pre-revenue. You can't. You just can't play.
You just give up too much. Yeah, you give up much too soon. Yeah, it's over.
Yeah.
And when it comes to how much you have to give up, and guys, feel free to correct me here. It's all about leverage. The more leverage you have, the less you have to give up when you're taking on an investor.
Right.
But that can mean a lot of things, so we won't get into that.
Yeah, I usually advise not more than 15%. So, Graham, interesting to hear your range of 15 to 30, because I always feel it's a multi-gate game, and if you give up too much in any one gate, then you don't have enough equity to give up in your next round. Yeah,
I'd say somewhere between 10 and probably 25. Because obviously there's going to be dilution for the investors as well in future rounds. But yeah, you never above 30. Like if you're giving up something above 30, you don't have everything.
There's no
you need,
future.
right? You don't have everything you need to get to the point. Yeah.
This has been Startup Talk, Toronto's startup podcast. For more exclusive content, the episode vault, and to be part of TorontoStarts community, visit TorontoStarts.com. Get your name on the newsletter mailing list and check out our upcoming events. For more episodes, subscribe now. And please recognize the time and work behind the scenes put into connecting you with the biggest visionaries, entrepreneurs, and innovators in Toronto by leaving a 5-star review. Join us for more next episode from Toronto's most active entrepreneur and startup community on Startup Talk.